March 15, 2024. Beverly Hills. Producer Marcus Webb had just made the worst joke of his life. 300 industry insiders watched Vincent Chen's face when Webb cracked wise about Jackie Chan's family circus act. Vincent smiled, nodded politely, excused himself to the bathroom. Webb was found dead 72 hours later. What happened in those 3 days became the most investigated death in Hollywood history. The FBI opened files because of it. And for months afterward, when people talked about Vincent Chen, they always came back to that party. The night Webb made his joke. The night Vincent Chen proved that some men don't get angry. They get methodical. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Detective Sarah Kim had seen enough crime scenes to know when something didn't add up. Standing in Marcus Webb's Malibu mansion, she studied the producer's body sprawled across his marble kitchen floor. A half-empty bottle of aged scotch shattered beside him. The coroner's preliminary assessment suggested a fall, drunk, alone, tragic accident, but the positioning was all wrong. Head trauma consistent with striking the counter edge, Officer Rodriguez read from his notes. Blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit. Neighbors heard nothing unusual. Sarah crouched beside the body, her latex gloves catching the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Webb's left hand was clenched in a fist, knuckles scraped raw. She pried open the fingers with her pen. Empty, but defensive wounds told a story the scotch bottle couldn't. When did you say the party was? 3 nights ago. Industry thing in Beverly Hills. Webb was allegedly fine when he left. Allegedly. Sarah photographed the hand, the blood spatter pattern on the Italian marble, the suspicious absence of Webb's phone. In her 8 years with LAPD, she'd learned that Hollywood deaths were never simple. Too much money, too many secrets, too many people with reasons to lie. Her phone buzzed. Text from Captain Morrison. Media's sniffing around. Handle this quiet, but quiet wasn't Sarah's style, especially when the evidence screamed murder. Vincent Chen arrived at Gold Dragon Studios at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes earlier than his usual routine. The parking lot stretched empty except for security, exactly how he preferred it. 32 years coordinating stunts had taught him that preparation happened in silence, when the world still slept and minds stayed sharp. His office overlooked Sound Stage 7, where they'd recreate Hong Kong rooftops for Jackie's next film. Vincent unlocked his desk drawer, removing a leather-bound journal worn smooth by decades of handling. Inside, neat handwriting documented every stunt, every injury, every detail that mattered. The same methodical precision that made him the most trusted coordinator in Hollywood. Today's entry would be different. March 18, 2024. Webb incident concluded. Investigation beginning. Maintain normal schedule. Vincent's phone displayed 17 missed calls from reporters, 4 from studio executives, 2 from Jackie's assistant. He deleted them all without listening. The industry thrived on panic, but panic created mistakes. Vincent Chen didn't make mistakes. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Through the frosted glass, Jackie Chan's unmistakable silhouette appeared. "Vincent? You okay, brother? Come in." Vincent closed the journal, sliding it back into the drawer. Jackie entered wearing workout clothes, concern etched across features that had launched 1,000 movie posters. "Reporters called me about Marcus Webb. Said you were at that party." Jackie settled into the chair across from Vincent's desk, the same spot he'd occupied for countless planning sessions. "They're asking questions. Let them ask." "Vincent!" Jackie leaned forward, voice dropping to that serious tone reserved for real conversations, not publicity interviews. "I know we don't usually talk about personal things, but if someone's trying to hurt you because of your association with me, no one's trying to hurt me. Then what happened at the party?" Vincent studied his oldest friend, this man who'd unknowingly funded 30 years of careful planning. Jackie's loyalty had been absolute, unquestioning. The guilt should have been crushing, but Vincent had learned to carry guilt like any other weight. Distributed properly, it strengthened rather than broke you. Webb made inappropriate comments. I responded professionally. He left. End of story. "What kind of comments?" Nothing that concerns you. Jackie's expression shifted, recognizing the tone that meant Vincent wouldn't elaborate. In 3 decades of friendship, he'd learned not to push when Vincent built walls. Still, concern lingered in his eyes. The studio's worried about publicity. If this becomes a scandal, it won't. How can you be sure? Because Vincent had spent 30 years ensuring nothing could touch Jackie Chan's reputation. Because every detail had been planned, every contingency considered. Because Marcus Webb's death was just one thread in a tapestry so complex that even the FBI would struggle to see the pattern. "Trust me," Vincent said simply. Jackie nodded slowly. Trust came naturally between them, built on shared risks and mutual respect. He didn't know that Vincent's loyalty came with a price, paid in blood and patience. After Jackie left, Vincent returned to his journal. The final entries were approaching. 30 years of names crossed off, debts collected, justice delivered one methodical step at a time. Only 3 names remained on the list he'd started in 1994, the night his world ended in a Hong Kong warehouse and a promise was born. Marcus Webb had been number 17. Outside his window, Soundstage 7 hummed to life as the crew arrived. Vincent Chen, respected coordinator, trusted friend, keeper of secrets, prepared for another day in the business of making heroes look invincible. But some heroes were just very good at hiding their broken parts. Tomorrow, we'll dive deeper into the party that started everything. Make sure you're following along because the next chapter reveals exactly what Webb said that night and why it signed his death warrant. The morning ritual never changed. Vincent Chen stood before the bathroom mirror in his Burbank apartment, watching steam from the shower fog the edges of his reflection. At 62, his face carried the map of 3 decades in Hollywood. Small scars from early stunt work, lines etched by California's sun, eyes that had seen too much but revealed nothing. He dressed with the same methodical precision that governed every aspect of his life. Dark jeans, pressed white shirt, leather jacket that had survived 18 years and countless film sets. The routine grounded him, especially on days when the past threatened to surface. The apartment itself told no stories. Clean lines, minimal furniture, walls bare except for a single framed photograph. Vincent and his son David at Ocean Park in Hong Kong, 1993. David, then 16, grinning beside a roller coaster, his whole future stretching ahead like summer light. Vincent touched the frame briefly, a gesture so automatic he barely registered it anymore. Some mornings, he could almost hear David's laugh echoing from the kitchen, smell the congee his son used to burn a tempting breakfast. 30 years hadn't diminished the ache. It had simply taught him to function around it, like learning to walk with shrapnel lodged near your heart. His phone buzzed. Text from Maria Santos, his assistant coordinator crew meeting pushed to 9. "Jackie wants to run through the harbor sequence again." Vincent smiled despite himself. Jackie's perfectionism bordered on obsessive, but it had kept them both employed for 3 decades. Their partnership had begun in 1994, just months after Vincent fled Hong Kong with nothing but rage and a promise carved into his bones. Jackie had taken a chance on a coordinator whose previous employer had mysteriously folded, whose references came with gaps that polite people didn't question. The irony still tasted bitter. Jackie Chan, the man whose reputation Vincent had spent 30 years protecting, had unknowingly bankrolled every step of his revenge. Every film, every stunt sequence, every paycheck had funded the patient dismantling of lives that deserved to end. Marcus Webb had simply been the latest payment on a debt that began in a warehouse fire that wasn't an accident. Vincent drove to the studio through morning traffic that moved like thick honey. Late mornings held a particular quality of light, golden, forgiving, promising that today might be different from yesterday. He'd learned not to trust that promise, but he still noticed it. Hope died hard, even when you'd spent decades methodically killing it in others. Gold Dragon Studios bustled with controlled chaos. Vincent parked in his usual spot, nodding to security guards who'd known him longer than some had known their wives. Respect came easily in their world. Hollywood appreciated competence more than friendship, and Vincent had built his reputation on being the man who made impossible stunts look effortless. "Morning, Mr. Chen." Sarah Wu, the craft services coordinator, approached with a steaming cup of black coffee and a knowing smile. She'd been bringing him the same order for 6 years without being asked. Coffee black, no sugar, hot enough to burn away whatever dreams had troubled his sleep. "Thank you, Sarah." "Rough week?" she asked, studying his face with the intuition of someone who'd fed Hollywood personalities long enough to read their moods like weather patterns. "They're all rough weeks." She laughed, but concern flickered in her eyes. Vincent recognized the look, the same protective instinct that made Jackie hire extra security when Vincent worked particularly dangerous sequences, made Maria insist he take vacation days he never used. People cared about him, which complicated everything. Revenge required isolation, but 30 years had accidentally built a family around him, and families asked questions when you came home with blood under your fingernails. Sound Stage 7 hummed with pre-production energy. Grips assembled rigging for the harbor chase, while designers fine-tuned a speedboat that would explode spectacularly for 5 seconds of screen time. Vincent surveyed the controlled mayhem, mentally cataloging every cable, every angle, every potential failure point that could turn movie magic into real tragedy. His pocket vibrated. Unknown number, but Vincent recognized the pattern. 3 rings, disconnect, call again. The signal he'd established with his Hong Kong contact 15 years ago. He stepped outside to answer. "Wei? The detective is asking questions about the party," the voice said in Cantonese. "Sarah Kim, LAPD homicide. She's thorough." How thorough? She requested guest lists from 3 years of Webb's parties, banking records. She's looking for patterns. Vincent processed this information like reviewing stunt footage, frame by frame, identifying what mattered. Detective Kim was moving faster than anticipated, but 30 years of planning had accounted for law enforcement interest. Understood. Should we be concerned? Vincent watched Jackie emerge from his trailer, already in costume, ready to throw himself off buildings for the entertainment of millions. His oldest friend, his unwitting accomplice, his greatest vulnerability. "No," Vincent said quietly. "We proceed as planned." Some heroes wore masks. Others had simply learned to make their faces into masks, hiding broken parts behind professional smiles and morning coffee and the careful maintenance of ordinary life. 3 names remained on his list. Detective Kim would have to wait her turn. Vincent ended the call and slipped the phone back into his jacket, but before he could return to the soundstage, it rang again. Different tone this time, his personal line, the number only 5 people possessed. The caller ID made his blood freeze. David Chen, Hong Kong. Impossible. Vincent stared at the screen, his hands suddenly unsteady. David had been dead for 30 years. He'd held his son's broken body in a Hong Kong hospital, felt the last breath leave lungs that would never laugh again. Yet there was the name, pulsing with each ring like a heartbeat he'd mourned for 3 decades. Wei? His voice cracked on the single syllable. Silence stretched across the international connection, broken only by static that sounded like distant rain. Then, a voice Vincent had replayed in his memory every night for 30 years. "Ba-ba." The words hit him like a physical blow. Vincent gripped the wall of the soundstage, his vision tunneling. "Ba-ba, father." The last word David had whispered in that sterile hospital room before the machines went silent and Vincent's world ended. "Who is this?" But even as he asked, Vincent knew. The slight rasp from a childhood respiratory infection. The way the vowels curved around a Hong Kong accent softened by international schools. Details a voice synthesizer couldn't replicate. Memories too precise for cruel coincidence. "I know what you've been doing, Baba. Marcus Webb, the others, all of them." Vincent's legs nearly buckled. 30 years of careful planning, meticulous execution, perfect control. All of it crumbling with 5 words spoken in his dead son's voice. David died in 1994. The statement emerged as a whisper, a prayer, a desperate attempt to maintain the reality he'd built his revenge upon. "David Chen died, yes, but I survived. They made sure you'd never look for someone who was already buried." The construction noise from the soundstage faded to white noise. Vincent's mind raced through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. The dental records had matched. He'd identified the body himself, spent hours memorizing every detail of his son's peaceful face before the cremation. The funeral had been real, his grief absolute, the promise carved into his heart authentic. Prove it. Vincent said. A soft laugh, heartbreakingly familiar. You used to make me practice stunt falls in our apartment courtyard. Mama would watch from the window, terrified I'd hurt myself. But you said fear was just excitement wearing the wrong clothes. Remember? Vincent's knees hit concrete. No one else knew that phrase, those private moments between father and son when David had dreamed of following him into film work. The memory felt like looking directly into the sun, too bright, too painful, too real. The night before I died, you gave me your jade pendant, said it would keep me safe during the warehouse shoot. I was wearing it when the fire started, when they pulled me from the wreckage while you were still fighting through smoke, screaming my name. Vincent's hand moved unconsciously to his throat, where he'd worn a replacement pendant every day for 30 years, a daily reminder of his failure to protect his only child. They told me you died in the explosion, showed me newspaper clippings about your funeral, photos of you crying at my grave. For weeks, I believed it. When I finally healed enough to think clearly, to ask questions, they explained why it had to be this way. The people responsible for the warehouse, they'd keep coming for both of us unless Vincent Chen believed his son was dead and David Chen disappeared forever. The voice continued, each word reshaping Vincent's understanding of everything. His revenge, built on the bedrock of loss, suddenly seemed constructed on quicksand. Every name crossed off his list, every life destroyed in David's memory. Had it all been built on a lie? They gave me a new identity, new family in Vancouver, a life you could never trace, in a place you'd never think to look. It was supposed to be temporary, just until the danger passed. But Baba, the voice broke slightly. The danger never passed because you became the danger. Vincent pressed his forehead against the cold concrete wall, trying to process 30 years of misdirected grief. Why now? Why call now? Because you're killing innocent people. Marcus Webb never ordered the warehouse fire. The men you've been hunting, most of them were victims too, just following orders from people you've never identified. And Jackie, God, Baba, Jackie's been your friend this whole time. He's been trying to help you heal while you used his money to destroy lives. Through the soundstage window, Vincent could see Jackie reviewing stunt choreography, completely absorbed in making magic look effortless. His oldest friend, his unwitting accomplice, his greatest vulnerability, and apparently his greatest kindness. Everything Vincent thought he knew was collapsing. 30 years of carefully maintained truth crumbling like a controlled demolition. His son was alive. His revenge was misdirected. His entire adult life had been built on a foundation of lies. The phone felt impossibly heavy in his hand as David's voice delivered the final blow. I need to see you, Baba. Because the people who really killed your son, our family, they're still out there, and now they know I'm alive. The phone line went dead, leaving Vincent staring at a black screen that might as well have been a mirror reflecting 30 years of delusion. His hands shook, not the controlled tremor of a man managing adrenaline, but the helpless quaking of someone whose entire foundation had just liquefied beneath him. David is alive. The thought ricocheted through his skull like a bullet fragment, destroying everything it touched. Vincent pushed himself off the wall, legs unsteady, and stumbled toward his office. He needed to think, needed to process, needed to... Vincent! Jackie's voice cut through the fog. Vincent turned to see his friend approaching, concern radiating from every line of his body. Behind Jackie, several crew members watched with the careful attention of people who'd learned to read their coordinators' moods like weather patterns. You look like you've seen a ghost, Jackie said, studying Vincent's face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing during takes. What's wrong? I thought I was avenging our dead son, but he's been alive this whole time and I've been murdering innocent people with money you gave me thinking we were friends. The truth clawed at Vincent's throat, desperate to escape, but 30 years of practiced deception held firm. Nothing. Phone call from an old contact. Technical issues with the harbor sequence. Jackie's expression didn't change, but Vincent caught the micro-expression, a slight tightening around the eyes that meant Jackie knew he was being lied to but wouldn't push. Their friendship had thrived on such careful boundaries, spaces where questions weren't asked and trust filled the gaps. Maybe you should take the morning off, Jackie suggested gently. You've been working non-stop since... He paused, clearly thinking about Marcus Webb, but too diplomatic to say the name aloud. "I'm fine." Vincent's voice sounded hollow even to himself. "Vincent." Jackie stepped closer, lowering his voice so the crew couldn't hear. "Whatever's going on, you don't have to handle it alone. We've been through everything together. The good films, the disasters, that insurance nightmare in '09. I trust you with my life every day, literally. You can trust me with whatever this is." The kindness in Jackie's voice was a physical weight. Vincent realized with crystalline clarity that Jackie had been offering genuine friendship for 3 decades, while Vincent had been using him as an unwitting bank account for systematic murder. The shame hit like a stunt fall gone wrong, sudden, disorienting, potentially fatal. "I need to make some calls," Vincent managed. Jackie nodded slowly, but didn't move away. "The studio executives want to meet this afternoon about the Webb situation. They're nervous about publicity, insurance claims, the usual corporate panic. I told them you'd handle it, but if you need backup, I'll handle it." "I know you will. You always do." Jackie paused, seemed to weigh his words carefully. "Vincent, I know we don't talk about personal things much, but if someone from the old days is causing trouble, if this connects to why you left Hong Kong..." Vincent's blood chilled. In 30 years, Jackie had never directly referenced Vincent's past, never asked about the mysterious circumstances that had brought them together. The unspoken agreement had been complete discretion in exchange for absolute loyalty. Now Jackie was probing, which meant, what if Jackie knows more than he's pretended? The paranoid thought bloomed like spilled blood, staining every memory. Vincent studied his friend's face, searching for tells, for any sign that their entire relationship had been elaborate theater. But Jackie's concern appeared genuine, his offer of help sincere. "There's nothing to discuss," Vincent said finally. Something flickered across Jackie's features. Disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. "Okay, but Vincent, be careful. Whatever game you're playing, there are people in this industry who play harder." Before Vincent could respond, Jackie was walking away, returning to the crew that waited for direction. Vincent watched him go, noting how conversations stopped when Jackie approached, how everyone's attention immediately focused on their work. Even after 40 years in Hollywood, Jackie commanded respect through presence alone. How many people are afraid of him, and why? Vincent's phone buzzed again. Text message from an unknown number. They know about the call. Meeting moved up. Pier 39, 2 hours. Come alone. His hands started shaking again. David, if it really was David, was already in Los Angeles, had been close enough to arrange a meeting within hours of their conversation, which meant he'd been watching, waiting, planning this revelation for how long? Through his office window, Vincent saw a black sedan parked across from the studio entrance. Tinted windows, government plates. As he watched, a woman emerged from the passenger side, Asian, mid-30s, moving with the controlled confidence of law enforcement. Detective Sarah Kim, most likely. She spoke briefly with someone inside the vehicle, then walked toward the studio gate. Vincent's carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. His dead son was alive. His revenge was misdirected. The police were closing in. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Jackie Chan, his oldest friend, his unwitting accomplice, possibly something else entirely, was asking questions Vincent couldn't answer without destroying everything. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the back exit, leaving behind 30 years of meticulous planning for the uncertainty of a pier-side reunion with a ghost. The back exit of Gold Dragon Studios led through a maintenance alley Vincent had mapped years ago, one of dozens of escape routes he'd memorized out of professional paranoia that now served a more desperate purpose. His hands fumbled with the car keys as Detective Sarah Kim's voice carried across the parking lot, asking security about employee schedules. She was thorough, methodical, exactly the kind of investigator who'd eventually connect threads Vincent had spent 30 years keeping separate. The drive to Pier 39 blurred past in fragments, red lights he barely stopped for, pedestrians who scattered from his erratic lane changes, the distant sound of his phone ringing unanswered. Vincent's mind ricocheted between impossible realities. David alive meant his revenge had been built on quicksand. Every name he'd crossed off, every life destroyed in his son's memory, had been carved from innocent flesh, while the real killers remained untouched. Marcus Webb never ordered the warehouse fire. The words echoed like a death sentence. Webb had died clutching his throat, eyes wide with betrayal, and Vincent had felt nothing but satisfaction watching his target's last breath. Now that satisfaction curdled into something that tasted like swallowing broken glass. How many others had he murdered while telling himself he was honoring David's memory? The pier stretched into San Francisco Bay like an accusing finger. Vincent parked and walked past tourists taking selfies with sea lions, their casual joy feeling obscene against the weight crushing his chest. 30 years of careful planning had led to this moment, a father about to meet the son whose death had defined his entire adult life. A figure sat alone on the far bench, back turned, shoulders carrying a familiar slump Vincent remembered from homework sessions and late-night movies. Even from behind, even after 3 decades, Vincent recognized the curve of David's spine, the way he tucked his left foot under his right knee when thinking. Ba ba. David turned, and Vincent's world completed its destruction. The face was older, marked by lines that spoke of different sorrows than the ones Vincent had been carrying, but the eyes were unchanged. Dark, intelligent, holding depths Vincent had watched develop from infancy. His son, alive, real, looking at him with an expression that mixed love and heartbreak, and something that might have been fear. "You look exactly the same," David said softly. "I used to wonder if you'd aged, if the grief had marked you. Guess I have my answer." Vincent couldn't speak. Every word he'd rehearsed in the car had evaporated, leaving him mute with wonder and horror. David was wearing a simple gray sweater, jeans, wedding ring that caught the afternoon light. Evidence of a life Vincent had never witnessed, happiness he'd never shared. "I have a daughter," David continued, pulling out his phone to show photos. "Emma. She's 7, loves gymnastics, hates vegetables, asks a million questions about everything. She doesn't know her grandfather exists because her grandfather has been too busy killing people to come find his living son." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Vincent sank onto the bench, studying the photos through tears he hadn't allowed himself in 30 years. A beautiful child with David's eyes and a stranger's smile, playing in a garden Vincent had never seen, in a life he'd never been invited to share. "They told me you'd moved on," David whispered. "Started a new family in America. The people who saved me, they said it was better for everyone if Vincent Chen's son stayed dead. I believed them because I was 17 and terrified, and they just pulled me from a fire that nearly killed me. I never moved on." Vincent's voice cracked. "I never remarried, never had other children. Every single day for 30 years I've thought about you, missed you, tried to honor your memory by—" He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "By murdering innocent people." David's tone held no judgment, only exhausted sadness. "I know about Marcus Webb, about the others. I've been tracking your work for 5 years since I finally learned the truth about what really happened in that warehouse." Vincent looked up sharply. "What truth?" David's expression hardened, and for a moment he looked exactly like his father, focused, dangerous, carrying secrets that could destroy lives. "The warehouse fire wasn't about the film, Baba. It was about something else entirely, something someone thought you'd witnessed or might discover. They tried to kill both of us to keep it buried." The pieces of a different puzzle began forming in Vincent's mind. "Who?" "People close enough to watch you for 30 years. Close enough to fund your revenge without you questioning where the money really came from. Close enough to make sure you never looked too deep into what really happened that night." David paused, studying his father's face. "Tell me, Baba, in 30 years of working for Jackie Chan, have you ever wondered why he never asked questions about your past? Why he trusted you so completely, so immediately? Why he's been so generous with money for someone he barely knew?" Vincent's blood turned to ice. Every kindness, every gesture of friendship, every moment of trust, suddenly recontextualized into something that felt like manipulation. Jackie's careful boundaries around personal questions, his immediate willingness to fund Vincent's life in America, the way conversations stopped when he approached, how even veteran Hollywood personalities showed him deference that seemed rooted in fear rather than respect. Jackie's been protecting you, Baba, but not from the people who tried to kill us. David's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He's been protecting himself from what you might remember about that night. Vincent stared at his son's face, watching 30 years of constructed reality crumble like a controlled demolition. The pier around them seemed to tilt, tourists and sea lions becoming background noise to the earthquake, reshaping his understanding of everything. That's impossible. But even as Vincent spoke the words, memories were already shifting, recontextualizing themselves under this new terrible light. Jackie's immediate trust when Vincent had arrived in Los Angeles, grief-stricken and desperate, the way Jackie had offered work without references, housing without questions, money without hesitation. Think about it, Baba. Really think. David leaned forward, his voice urgent but gentle. What were you doing the week before the warehouse fire? What had you discovered on set that might have made someone nervous? Vincent's mind raced backward through decades of carefully suppressed memories. The Hong Kong production had been troubled from the start. Budget irregularities, crew members who appeared and disappeared without explanation, equipment that arrived damaged or wrong. He'd been Jackie's second unit coordinator then, responsible for reviewing all stunt preparations, all safety protocols, all the insurance reports. The words escaped Vincent's lips like a death rattle. I found discrepancies in the insurance reports, equipment listed as damaged that I'd personally inspected and approved, claims filed for accidents that never happened. David nodded grimly. What else? Shipping manifests that didn't match inventory, prop weapons that were, God, they were real weapons. I thought it was just sloppy paperwork, typical Hong Kong production chaos. I made copies to discuss with Jackie after we finished the warehouse sequence. Vincent's hands began to shake as the full implication crystallized. The copies were in my trailer the night of the fire. Jackie wasn't just the star of that production, Baba. He was the money behind it. His production company, his financing deals, his connections to investors who needed certain transactions to remain invisible. You stumbled onto a money laundering operation that stretched from Hong Kong to Los Angeles, and you were too honest to ignore it. The revelation hit Vincent like a stunt fall gone catastrophically wrong. Every conversation with Jackie over the past 3 decades suddenly felt different. The careful way Jackie had steered discussions away from their Hong Kong days, his insistence that Vincent focus on American productions, the generous salary that had seemed like friendship but now felt like hush money. The night of the fire, when you were pulled unconscious from the wreckage, David continued, Jackie visited you in the hospital, alone. Do you remember what you talked about? Vincent closed his eyes, forcing himself back to those pain-hazed days. Jackie sitting beside his bed, voice thick with what Vincent had interpreted as grief. I'm so sorry about David, so sorry about everything. When you're ready, I want to help you start over. Clean slate, new life, leave all this Hong Kong business behind. He offered to help me come to America, Vincent whispered. Said there was nothing left for me in Hong Kong, that I needed distance from the memories. He arranged everything, visa, work permits, even found me an apartment. He arranged everything because he needed you close enough to monitor but far enough from Hong Kong that you'd never dig deeper into what really happened. For 30 years, he's been your friend, your employer, your benefactor, and your warden. Vincent thought about Detective Sarah Kim asking questions at the studio, about Jackie's subtle warning that morning, there are people in this industry who play harder. Had that been concern or threat? The money I've been using for the revenge, Vincent said, the words tasting like poison. The payments Jackie arranged for special projects. He was funding your misdirected anger to keep you busy hunting ghosts while the real criminals stayed invisible. David reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. I've spent 5 years gathering evidence. The warehouse fire was meant to kill both of us and destroy the documents you'd copied. When it failed, when we both survived, they improvised. Convinced you I was dead, convinced me you'd moved on, kept us separated while Jackie managed you like a weapon pointed in the wrong direction. Vincent opened the folder with trembling hands. Photos of bank transfers, corporate documents showing shell companies connected to Jackie's production empire, surveillance photos of Vincent at each of his revenge kills. Someone had been watching, documenting, perhaps even facilitating his access to targets. Marcus Webb was clean, David said quietly. So were most of the others on your list. They were mid-level executives who'd crossed Jackie in business deals, competitors who'd gotten too close to understanding his real operations. You weren't avenging my death, Baba. You were eliminating Jackie's enemies while believing you were honoring my memory. The final piece clicked into place with sickening clarity. Vincent had been a weapon for 30 years, carefully maintained and precisely aimed. Every moment of friendship, every gesture of trust, every payment that had funded his quest for justice, all of it choreographed by the man he'd loved like a brother. "Why tell me now?" Vincent asked. David's expression grew grim. "Because Detective Kim is getting close to the truth, and Jackie's decided his investment in Vincent Chen has outlived its usefulness. The black sedan that followed you from the studio? Those weren't police backup units." Vincent's phone buzzed against his chest, the vibration feeling like a death knell. David's eyes tracked the movement, and something in his expression shifted, fear replacing the careful control he'd maintained throughout their conversation. "Don't answer it," David said quietly. "Not yet." But Vincent was already looking at the screen. Jackie's name glowed like an accusation. The call went to voicemail, then immediately started ringing again, persistent, urgent. "He knows we're meeting," David continued, scanning the pier with practiced wariness. "The people watching you aren't just documenting anymore, Baba. They're preparing for cleanup." Vincent felt the weight of 30 years pressing down on his shoulders. Every shared meal with Jackie, every laugh, every moment of what he'd believed was genuine friendship now revealed as elaborate theater. The betrayal cut deeper than his son's supposed death, because this one was still happening, still unfolding with each breath. "The detective," Vincent managed. "Sarah Kim, she's not working with them?" "She's legitimate LAPD, but she doesn't know what she's walking into. Her investigation threatens everything Jackie's built, which means she's in as much danger as we are." David stood, his movements carrying an urgency that made Vincent's chest tighten. "We need to move. There's something else you need to see." They walked toward the parking structure, David's eyes constantly moving, cataloging exits and potential threats with skills Vincent recognized from his own training. His son had learned to be afraid, to be careful, to survive in shadows, lessons no father should have had to watch their child master. "The night of the warehouse fire," David said as they reached Vincent's car, "I wasn't supposed to be there. I'd come to bring you dinner, remember? Just a 17-year-old kid who wanted to spend time with his baba." The memory hit Vincent like a physical blow. David arriving with containers of dim sum, complaining about traffic, insisting on staying to watch the stunt rehearsal, even though Vincent had told him to go home. If David had listened, if Vincent had been more insistent. "They tried to kill you, and I got caught in the crossfire," David continued. "For 30 years, I've lived with the guilt that my presence there complicated their plan, made them sloppy, led to the fire that nearly killed us both." Vincent's phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number, but when he answered, Jackie's voice filled the car through the Bluetooth system. "Vincent, where are you? The police were just here asking questions. Detective Kim seems to think you might be in danger." The concern in Jackie's voice sounded so genuine, so perfectly calibrated to their decades of friendship, that Vincent felt his resolve waver. This was the man who'd attended his birthday dinners, who'd called to check on him during illnesses, who'd created a life for Vincent in America when he'd had nothing left. "I'm handling some personal business," Vincent replied carefully. "The studio executives are asking about the Webb situation again. They're nervous about the publicity, about potential connections to other incidents. I told them you had everything under control, but—" Jackie paused, and in that silence Vincent heard something new, calculation where there should have been worry. "Vincent, I think we should meet. There are things we need to discuss about your future with the company." David was shaking his head frantically, but Vincent found himself responding. "Where?" "My house in the hills. You remember the address. Come alone. We don't need corporate lawyers complicating a conversation between old friends." The call ended, leaving father and son staring at each other across 30 years of manipulation and lies. "It's a trap," David said simply. "He's backed into a corner now, with the police investigation and our reunion threatening everything he's built." Jackie Chan doesn't leave loose ends. Vincent thought about the man he'd known for 3 decades. Patient, methodical, someone who planned every movement with precision. If Jackie felt threatened, he wouldn't act rashly. He'd create a scenario where Vincent's death looked like another accident, another tragedy in a dangerous profession. "Then we go together," Vincent said, "father and son. Let him try to explain why he needs us both dead." "Baba, no. You don't understand what he's become, what he's capable of. The money laundering was just the beginning. Over 30 years he's built something much bigger, much more dangerous. The people he works with now don't just kill witnesses. They eliminate entire bloodlines to send messages." Vincent started the engine, his decision crystallizing with the mechanical certainty of a stunt sequence. Every movement choreographed, every outcome planned, every variable accounted for except one, the possibility of choosing a different script. "Then it's time to send a message of our own," he said, pulling out of the parking structure. "I've been his weapon for 30 years. Let's see how he handles it when that weapon finally learns to aim itself." Behind them, a black sedan fell into formation, maintaining professional distance while ensuring they couldn't disappear. The final act was beginning, and Vincent Chen was done being anyone's puppet. The drive through the Hollywood Hills felt like ascending toward judgment, each winding turn carrying Vincent and David deeper into the carefully manicured heart of an empire built on lies. Vincent's hands remained steady on the wheel. 30 years of stunt work had taught him that precision mattered most when everything was falling apart. "There," David pointed to a side street that branched off Mulholland. "Pull over before we reach the house. I need to show you something." Vincent parked beneath a sprawling oak that cast shadows like broken promises across the windshield. David retrieved a tablet from his jacket, his fingers moving with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years preparing for this moment. "This is Jackie's property," David said, displaying an aerial view of the compound. Security cameras, motion sensors, panic room connected directly to private security. But look at this. He swiped to thermal imaging from the previous night. 12 heat signatures inside a house where Jackie supposedly lives alone. Vincent studied the screen, recognizing the tactical patterns. Bodyguards. Enforcers. The same team that's been cleaning up Jackie's messes for decades. David's voice carried the weight of someone who'd been running from these shadows since he was 17. "Baba, whatever you're planning, this isn't a conversation between old friends. This is an execution." But Vincent was already reaching into the glove compartment, retrieving items David hadn't noticed him pack: wire cutters, a small explosive device designed for controlled demolitions, and something that looked like a garage door opener but carried the weight of finality. "You learned to survive in the shadows," Vincent said quietly. "I learned to make things fall down safely. Sometimes those skills overlap." David stared at his father with a mixture of recognition and horror. "You're going to kill him. I'm going to give him the same choice he gave us 30 years ago." Vincent's voice held no anger, no heat, just the measured precision of someone who'd spent 3 decades perfecting the choreography of violence. "Except this time he'll know what's coming." They drove the final quarter mile in silence, Vincent's mind calculating angles and timing with the mechanical certainty that had made him one of Hollywood's most trusted coordinators. Jackie's house rose before them like a monument to successful deception, glass and steel and carefully maintained illusions that had cost Vincent everything he'd ever loved. Vincent parked in the circular driveway, noting the positions of the other vehicles, the sight lines from the house, the escape routes that weren't really escape routes at all. David remained in the passenger seat, his face pale with the understanding that his father had moved beyond revenge into something colder and more final. "Baba." Vincent looked at his son, really looked at him, seeing not just the man who'd survived, but the boy who'd brought him dim sum on the night everything changed. "You have a daughter who asks a million questions. Go home to her. Let me finish what I started 30 years too late. If you do this, you'll never meet Emma. You'll never have the life we could still build together." The words hit harder than any physical blow, but Vincent's resolve remained unshakable. He'd been Jackie Chan's weapon for 30 years, eliminating enemies while believing he was honoring his son's memory. The irony was perfect, terrible, complete, and it demanded a response that only Vincent could deliver. I've been dead for 30 years, Vincent said, stepping out of the car. The man who could be Emma's grandfather died in that warehouse fire. What's left is just unfinished business. The front door opened before Vincent reached it, revealing Jackie Chan in casual clothes that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. The smile was exactly the same, warm, genuine, carrying 3 decades of shared history that now felt like an elaborate forgery. Vincent, you came alone, good. We have so much to discuss. Yes, Vincent replied, following Jackie into the house where their friendship would finally end. We do. The living room was exactly as Vincent remembered from previous visits. Comfortable furniture, awards discreetly displayed, photographs documenting a career built on carefully controlled danger. But now Vincent noticed what he'd missed before. The subtle positioning that eliminated blind spots. The furniture arrangement that created clear fields of fire. The artwork that probably concealed monitoring equipment. Jackie poured 2 glasses of whiskey, the ritual they'd shared countless times over the years. To old friends, he said, raising his glass. To old friends, Vincent agreed, meeting Jackie's eyes with the steady gaze of someone who'd finally learned to see clearly. And the sons we've both lost. Jackie's hand stopped halfway to his lips, whiskey catching the afternoon light like liquid amber. In that frozen moment, Vincent saw recognition dawn in his old friend's face, the understanding that 30 years of careful manipulation had finally reached its end. The truth hung between them like a held breath, waiting for someone to break the silence that had lasted 3 decades. Vincent Chen was done waiting. Jackie set his glass down with the careful precision of someone disarming an explosive device. David is alive. It wasn't a question. Vincent watched his oldest friend, his handler, his manipulator, his brother in everything but truth, process the implications with the same methodical intelligence that had choreographed 3 decades of deception. He contacted you, Jackie continued, moving to the window with movements that seemed casual but positioned him near what Vincent now recognized as a panic button disguised as a light switch. Showed you evidence, made you understand, made me remember, Vincent corrected. The warehouse, the documents I'd copied, the real reason you needed us both dead. Jackie's reflection in the window looked older than the man Vincent had known, weighted with calculations that had nothing to do with friendship. I never wanted David hurt. He was just a boy bringing his father dinner. Wrong place, wrong time. Wrong father asking too many questions about shipping manifests that didn't match. You were always too honest for this business, Vincent, even back then. Jackie turned from the window, and the mask of warmth finally slipped completely. What remained was something colder, more practical, a man who'd built an empire on the foundation of a burning warehouse and a 17-year-old's supposed death. I saved your life that night, pulled you from the flames, myself, so you could use me for 30 years. So you could have a life, a career, purpose. The words carried the heat of genuine conviction, and Vincent realized that Jackie had somehow convinced himself he was the hero of this story. You were drinking yourself to death in Hong Kong, haunted by guilt over David's death. I gave you targets, Vincent, people who deserved what you did to them. Marcus Webb deserved to die for making a joke? Jackie's silence stretched long enough for Vincent to understand that Webb's death had served multiple purposes, eliminating a business rival while providing Detective Kim with a trail that would eventually lead her to Vincent instead of the real operations. The others weren't innocent either, Jackie said finally. Richard Moss was skimming from pension funds. Elena Rodriguez was covering up safety violations that got stuntmen killed. I gave you justice, Vincent, even if you didn't know it. Vincent felt the weight of the detonator in his pocket. David's thermal imaging burned into his memory. 12 heat signatures waiting for Jackie's signal. And now? Now we have a problem. Jackie moved to the bar, his back to Vincent in a gesture that might have seemed trusting if Vincent hadn't noticed the mirror positioned to watch every movement. Detective Kim is close to connecting dots that can't be connected. Your reunion with David threatens arrangements that go far beyond our personal history. The money laundering was just the beginning. Jackie poured himself another whiskey, this one larger. 30 years of careful investment, legitimate business built on temporary foundations. I employ thousands of people now, Vincent. Stunt crews, production teams, entire families who depend on the infrastructure we've built, on the bodies we've buried, on the future we've created from the ashes of one terrible night. Jackie's voice carried the weight of a man who'd convinced himself that scale justified sacrifice. David can disappear again. You can have an accident on set. Tragic, but believable. Detective Kim's investigation can hit dead ends that look like police incompetence instead of active obstruction. Vincent understood now why Jackie had invited him here alone, why the enforcers were positioned throughout the house. This wasn't a conversation between old friends. It was a final briefing before execution, the professional courtesy of explaining why he had to die. Or? Vincent asked. There is no or, old friend. There never was. Vincent's hand found the detonator, thumb resting on the button that would bring down the carefully constructed lies along with everything else. But he thought of David waiting in the car, of a granddaughter named Emma who asked a million questions, of Detective Sarah Kim pursuing justice through legitimate channels that might actually work if given the chance. The warehouse fire, Vincent said. You set charges to destroy the documents, but you saved me from the flames. Why? For the first time since Vincent had entered the house, Jackie's expression showed something genuinely human. Because I loved you like a brother, because seeing you burn would have destroyed the part of me that was still capable of friendship. And David, I thought he was dead. By the time I learned otherwise, you'd already built a life around grieving him. Changing that truth would have broken you completely. Vincent pulled out the detonator, watching Jackie's eyes track the movement with professional assessment rather than fear. This brings down the house and everything in it, including us. The enforcers are positioned to... The enforcers are handling Detective Kim and David. I know your methods, Jackie. I've been watching you plan operations for 30 years. Vincent's thumb hovered over the button. But I learned something today that you never understood. Sometimes the most important stunt is knowing when not to jump. Vincent pocketed the detonator and walked toward the door, leaving Jackie standing in the ruins of his carefully constructed endgame. Outside, David was waiting with Detective Kim's card in his hand and 30 years of evidence ready for proper authorities. The real performance was just beginning, and for the first time in 3 decades, Vincent Chen was writing his own script.